What if you left everything behind, your family, your home, your security, and moved to a foreign land with nothing but a dream? This is the journey of one man's relentless pursuit of success, from washing dishes and working construction to building a thriving business that transforms lives. Through struggle, resilience, and an unshakable belief in himself, he learns that true success isn't just about achieving goals, it's about inspiring others along the way. Dive into this powerful tale of grit, growth, and giving back. When I look back on the moment I decided to leave, it feels almost surreal, as if I were watching someone else's life unfold. Back then, I was just a restless 20-something with a heart full of dreams but pockets that barely held a few crumpled bills. I grew up in a small, stagnant town where opportunities were scarce, and ambition was a rarity. Everyone seemed to accept that life was meant to be endured, not lived. But I couldn't. I refused to. The decision wasn't easy. Leaving meant abandoning the familiar, family dinners, childhood friends, and the comfort of knowing every street corner and alleyway. But it also meant escaping the weight of expectations, or, perhaps, the lack thereof. Where I came from, people didn't dream big. You were expected to find a modest job, marry young, and settle into a life of quiet mediocrity. I wanted more. The final push came one evening as I stared at the cracked ceiling of my tiny bedroom. I had just finished a grueling shift at the local factory, my hands raw and aching. The thought of spending the next 40 years in that same routine filled me with a dread I couldn't shake. That night, I made the decision, I was leaving. The next few weeks were a blur of preparations. I sold what little I owned, my second-hand bicycle, a worn-out guitar, and a few other odds and ends. The money wasn't much, but it was enough for a one-way ticket to a foreign country where the streets were rumored to be paved with gold. Of course, I knew the reality wouldn't match the myth, but even the chance of something better was worth the risk. When the day came to leave, I packed my belongings into a single duffel bag. It felt strange, realizing that everything I owned could fit into such a small space. At the airport, my family, stoic and supportive as ever, offered their goodbyes. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering words of encouragement while fighting back tears. My father, ever the pragmatist, handed me a small envelope with some cash and a handwritten note. "For emergencies," he said. I never opened the note until years later, but his words were always with me. The flight was both exhilarating and terrifying. As the plane ascended, I watched my hometown disappear beneath the clouds, replaced by an endless horizon. I was leaving behind everything I had ever known, stepping into a world of uncertainty. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. Arriving in the new country was like stepping onto another planet. The language was unfamiliar, the streets chaotic, and the people moved with a purpose I couldn't yet understand. My savings quickly dwindled as I navigated the labyrinth of immigration paperwork, cheap hostels, and overpriced meals. I had expected challenges, but the reality of starting from scratch hit harder than I could have imagined. For weeks, I lived off instant noodles and odd jobs. I'd take whatever work I could find, washing dishes, unloading trucks, even handing out flyers in the rain. My first stable job came when a small cafe hired me as a waiter. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. The hours were long, and the pay was barely enough to cover rent, but it gave me a foothold. I found a tiny apartment on the outskirts of the city, barely more than a room with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet. It was far from the life I had imagined, but it was mine. I spent my nights there, lying on a creaky mattress, staring at the ceiling, and wondering if I had made the right choice. The loneliness was the hardest part. There were days when I didn't speak to anyone except for the occasional thank you or excuse me at work. I missed home, but I couldn't let myself dwell on it. I had burned my bridges, going back wasn't an option. Yet, despite the struggles, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Every small victory, a paycheck, a smile from a customer, a kind word from a coworker, reminded me that I was moving forward. Slowly, painfully, but forward nonetheless. The city itself became a character in my story, equal parts adversary and ally. Its towering skyscrapers seemed to mock me at first, reminders of how far I had to climb. But as I walked its streets, I began to see its beauty, the hidden parks tucked between buildings, the street vendors peddling exotic foods, and the way the city came alive at night with a symphony of lights and sounds. It was overwhelming and inspiring, a constant reminder of why I had chosen this path. Looking back, that first chapter of my journey was both the hardest and the most crucial. It stripped me of my illusions and forced me to confront my fears and limitations. But it also gave me something invaluable, a sense of purpose. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let the hardships break me. I had made my choice, and I was determined to see it through. As I settled into my new reality, one thought kept me going: this is just the beginning. Arriving in a foreign country was a collision of wonder and fear. The airport buzzed with unfamiliar languages, signs I couldn't read, and faces that moved with a confidence I couldn't yet muster. My mind swirled with questions: had I made the right decision? Would I survive here? But those thoughts had to wait. I had more immediate concerns: finding a place to stay and work to support myself. I rented a room in a dilapidated hostel near the city's industrial district. It wasn't much: a narrow bed with a lumpy mattress, a shared bathroom that perpetually smelled of mildew, and a window that overlooked an alley cluttered with trash bins. But it was a roof over my head, and for that, I was grateful. The first few nights were sleepless as I lay there, listening to the muffled sounds of the city, cars honking, distant laughter, and the occasional crash of glass breaking in the alley. The room felt both like a refuge and a prison. The next day, I ventured out into the city with my few belongings and even fewer words in the local language. Every step felt like navigating a maze, the streets sprawling in a way that overwhelmed my small-town sensibilities. Armed with a list of potential jobs jotted down on a crumpled piece of paper, I began knocking on doors. Cafes, restaurants, construction sites, any place that seemed like it might take a chance on someone with no connections and no experience. Rejection came swiftly and frequently. Some employers dismissed me with a polite shake of the head, others didn't bother to hide their irritation at my broken attempts to communicate. I'd underestimated how difficult it would be to find work without local references or a strong command of the language. Still, I trudged on, my pride shrinking with every rejection, but my determination burning brighter. Failure wasn't an option: I had no safety net to fall back on. My first break came at a modest cafe tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The owner, an older man with a weathered face, took one look at me and seemed to understand my desperation. He handed me an apron and pointed to a sink piled high with dirty dishes. The work was grueling, hours spent on my feet, scrubbing plates and glasses until my fingers felt raw. But it was honest work, and at the end of my first shift, I held my first paycheck in the new currency. It wasn't much, but it felt like a fortune. From there I took on more odd jobs. In the mornings, I worked at the cafe. In the afternoons, I labored at a nearby construction site, hauling bricks and mixing cement under the relentless sun. The physical toll was immense. My muscles ached in ways I'd never experienced, and my hands grew calloused and rough. But the exhaustion was tempered by a sense of purpose. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something, even if it was just a foundation for survival. The evenings brought their own challenges. Alone in my room, I grappled with loneliness that gnawed at the edges of my resolve. I missed my family, my friends, and the comfort of familiarity. To combat the isolation, I began teaching myself the local language. I'd spend hours poring over second-hand textbooks, practicing phrases in front of the cracked mirror. Progress was slow, but each new word felt like a small victory, a tool to chip away at the barriers between me and this new world. An unexpected setback came one rainy evening as I walked home from the construction site. My wallet, containing most of my earnings, was stolen by a group of pickpockets. I chased after them, shouting words that probably made little sense, but they disappeared into the labyrinth of alleys. Standing there, drenched and penniless, I felt the weight of my decision to leave home more acutely than ever. That night, I sat in my room and stared at the empty space where my wallet should have been, wondering if I had the strength to continue. But giving up wasn't an option. I took on more shifts at the cafe and construction site, working longer hours to recover what I'd lost. The experience taught me a harsh but invaluable lesson: survival in this new land would demand resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The city, once intimidating and alien, began to feel more familiar with each passing day. I started to recognize faces: the grocer who always greeted me with a nod, the bus driver who waited an extra second when he saw me running to catch the bus. These small moments of connection reminded me that I wasn't invisible, that I belonged here in some small way. By the end of those first few months, I'd found a fragile rhythm to my days. The struggles were far from over, but I was surviving. And in survival, I found a flicker of hope, the belief that perhaps, one day, I could do more than just survive. Perhaps I could thrive. Survival became my routine, but it was a precarious existence. Every day felt like a tightrope walk, balancing on the edge of poverty with no safety net below. I worked every hour I could, yet my earnings barely stretched far enough to cover rent, food, and the occasional necessity. There were no luxuries, no days off. Even minor setbacks felt monumental, threatening to undo everything I'd managed to build so far. The construction work was particularly grueling. My shift started before sunrise and often lasted until well after dark. The foreman, a hard-nosed man who rarely spoke except to bark orders, assigned me the toughest tasks: hauling heavy sacks of cement, mixing concrete, and climbing precarious scaffolding with tools in hand. The physical toll was relentless. My body ached constantly, and my hands were perpetually blistered and raw. But it wasn't just the labor that tested me. The job site was a chaotic environment where tempers flared easily, and safety protocols were often ignored. One day, I witnessed a fellow worker fall from a scaffold. He survived, but the sight of him lying there, groaning in pain as we waited for an ambulance, was a stark reminder of how dangerous this work could be. The incident haunted me for days, planting a seed of fear that I couldn't shake. At the cafe, things were slightly more predictable, though no less exhausting. The mornings were a whirlwind of brewing coffee, taking orders, and scrubbing counters until they gleamed. The owner's wife managed the front of house and occasionally offered me kind words of encouragement, but she was also quick to point out my mistakes. I could tell she meant well, but her criticisms often left me feeling inadequate. My room at the hostel remained a sanctuary of sorts, though it offered little comfort. The shared kitchen was a battleground, with residents competing for limited stove space and utensils. Meals were often improvised concoctions of cheap ingredients: rice, canned vegetables, and whatever discounted items I could find at the local market. The walls of my room were so thin that I could hear my neighbors' arguments, laughter, and the occasional sobs, a constant reminder that I wasn't the only one struggling. Despite the hardships, there were moments of unexpected beauty. One evening, after a particularly brutal day at the construction site, I stumbled upon a small park tucked away between two towering buildings. It was quiet and serene, with a single bench overlooking a modest fountain. I sat there for what felt like hours, letting the cool night air soothe my aching muscles. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. The loneliness, however, was a constant companion. While I'd begun to pick up more of the local language, my interactions were still largely transactional. I envied the groups of friends I saw laughing together at the cafe or the families strolling through the city's busy streets. My phone calls home were infrequent, as the time difference and my erratic schedule made it difficult to connect. When I did manage to speak with my family, I kept the conversation light, not wanting them to worry about the reality of my situation. An unexpected opportunity arose when the owner of the construction company offered me a chance to learn some basic carpentry skills. He'd noticed my work ethic and decided to invest a bit of time in training me. While the pay didn't increase, the new skills gave me a sense of progress, however small. I threw myself into the training, determined to make the most of the opportunity. But life had a way of throwing curveballs. One afternoon, as I was heading home from the cafe, a sudden downpour turned the streets into rivers. I slipped on the wet pavement and twisted my ankle badly. Limping back to the hostel, I realized that even a minor injury could jeopardize everything. Unable to work for several days, I watched my savings dwindle and my anxiety grow. It was a stark reminder of how precarious my situation truly was. Still, I refused to let despair take root. I spent my forced downtime studying the language more intensely, scribbling notes and practicing pronunciation until my throat was sore. I also began sketching out ideas for a future beyond survival. Though I had no clear plan yet, the seed of a dream was beginning to sprout, a dream of building something of my own, something that could provide stability and purpose. The weeks that followed were a blur of recovery and relentless work. My ankle healed, though it remained tender, and I returned to my grueling routine. But something had shifted within me. The spark of determination that had driven me to leave home was now a steady flame. I didn't just want to survive anymore. I wanted to thrive. And for the first time, I began to believe that I could. The city was a harsh teacher, but it was also a generous one if you paid attention. Each passing day felt like a lesson in resilience, but amidst the chaos of survival, I started noticing patterns, little sparks of opportunity in the fabric of my surroundings. Life was still a grind, but something had begun to change within me. I was no longer merely reacting to my circumstances, I was starting to take control. The turning point came during one of my evening shifts at the cafe. A regular patron, a middle-aged man with a kind smile and an ever-present notebook, left behind a small stack of flyers on the counter. They were for his business, a cleaning service specializing in eco-friendly solutions. I don't know why I took one. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe it was the subconscious tug of inspiration. That flyer ended up tucked into the pages of my language workbook, where it lingered as an unspoken possibility. Meanwhile, my carpentry training at the construction site had started to pay off. I wasn't just another pair of hands anymore, I was learning to create, to measure, and cut with precision, to build something lasting. It was satisfying work, even if it was still exhausting. The foreman began trusting me with more complex tasks, and though the pay didn't reflect my growing skill, the experience was invaluable. The cafe, too, became more than just a job. I started recognizing the regulars, learning their habits and preferences. The owner's wife even complimented me on my improved efficiency, a rare but encouraging gesture. These small victories added up, reinforcing my belief that hard work could lead somewhere, even if the path wasn't yet clear. An unexpected connection came in the form of an elderly woman who frequented the cafe. She always ordered the same thing, a black coffee and a plain croissant, and sat by the window reading thick, leather-bound books. One day, she handed me a small card along with her payment. It was for an evening language class at a local community center. "You're doing well," she said in halting words of my native tongue. "But better with this." That card became my entryway to a new phase of growth. The classes were inexpensive, and the schedule fit around my work. Twice a week, I sat in a brightly lit room with other immigrants, all of us struggling but determined to learn. The instructor, a former journalist, made the lessons engaging and practical. I found myself looking forward to those evenings, not just for the language skills, but for the sense of camaraderie. For the first time in months, I didn't feel entirely alone. But even as I made progress, life continued to test me. One week, the cafe's business slowed dramatically, and the owner cut my hours. At the same time, a series of delays at the construction site meant fewer shifts and smaller paychecks. My savings dwindled again, and the specter of poverty loomed larger than ever. I knew I had to find another source of income. That's when I remembered the flyer. Sitting on my creaky bed one night, I unfolded it and stared at the words. Eco-Clean Solutions, Professional Cleaning Services. My mind raced. Cleaning wasn't glamorous, but it was straightforward and always in demand. And eco-friendly? That was a niche I could build on. But how? I had no capital, no experience, no idea where to start. Still, the idea wouldn't let go of me. Over the next few weeks, I began researching obsessively. I visited libraries, scoured online forums, and watched countless videos on cleaning techniques, small business management, and marketing. I filled a notebook with ideas, sketches of potential logos, and lists of supplies I'd need. It was overwhelming, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time since leaving home, I felt like I was working toward something that was truly mine. An opportunity to test my idea came sooner than I expected. The elderly woman from the cafe mentioned that her daughter was looking for someone to deep clean her apartment before an upcoming move. "I can do it," I said, surprising even myself. She raised an eyebrow but agreed to put me in touch. The job was harder than I'd anticipated. Armed with nothing but borrowed cleaning supplies and sheer determination, I spent an entire day scrubbing, dusting, and polishing. By the time I was finished, my back ached and my hands were raw, but the apartment sparkled. The woman's daughter was impressed and handed me an envelope with payment that felt like a fortune. Over the next few weeks, I took on similar tasks, relying on word of mouth and a few hastily printed flyers to spread the word. Each job taught me something new: how to manage time better, how to negotiate rates, how to handle difficult clients. Slowly but surely, the dream of starting my own cleaning business began to feel less like a fantasy and more like a goal within reach. By the end of that chapter in my journey, I was still far from success, but I was no longer adrift. I had found a purpose, a direction. And with every floor I scrubbed and every window I cleaned, I took another step toward a future I could believe in. Starting a business with almost no resources was a daunting task, but I had determination and a clear goal. With the payment from my first few cleaning jobs, I purchased basic supplies, a sturdy mop, all-purpose cleaner, and a few microfiber cloths. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get started. I began marketing my services with hand-drawn flyers posted on community boards and local shops. My pitch was simple: professional, eco-friendly cleaning at a fair price. Slowly, word began to spread. A few more clients trickled in, mostly small jobs like tidying up apartments or cleaning kitchens. Each one felt like a small victory. But the challenges were unrelenting. One week, I booked a job to clean an office space, my largest project yet. Arriving early, I discovered that my vacuum cleaner, borrowed from a neighbor, had broken. With no time to spare, I resorted to scrubbing the carpets by hand. The job took twice as long, but I completed it, earning not just payment but also a glowing review from the client. These experiences taught me the importance of preparation and flexibility. I started building a checklist for every job and learned to carry backup tools whenever possible. As I gained confidence, I also began experimenting with homemade cleaning solutions, simple mixtures of vinegar and baking soda, which impressed clients looking for eco-friendly options. Not all jobs went smoothly. One client, unsatisfied with my work, refused to pay the full amount. It was a blow to my confidence, but instead of arguing, I took their feedback seriously and improved my methods. Over time, setbacks like these became lessons, each one sharpening my skills and resilience. Within a few months, I reached a point where the demand for my services exceeded what I could handle alone. Though the decision was risky, I hired my first helper, a fellow immigrant who was also eager to build a better life. Together, we tackled larger projects, splitting both the workload and the earnings. By the end of this phase, my cleaning business had grown into something sustainable. It wasn't yet a success story, but it was a foundation, proof that with hard work and adaptability, I could turn a fragile idea into a thriving enterprise. The months that followed marked a critical turning point in my journey. My cleaning service had grown from a desperate bid for survival into something that resembled a real enterprise. Each day brought new challenges, but it also brought growth, both for the business and for me as a person. The demand for eco-friendly cleaning solutions was steadily rising, and with every new client, I began to feel a sense of validation. Perhaps, for the first time, I believed I could build something that truly lasted. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when a small office complex reached out for a recurring contract. This wasn't just another one-time gig, it was a long-term commitment to service their offices on a weekly basis. This steady income stream was a game-changer, allowing me to think beyond the immediate hustle for the next job. I knew I had to professionalize my operation. To meet the demands of this new contract, I focused on refining my processes, ensuring that quality and consistency became the cornerstones of my service. To keep up with the growing workload, I made the bold decision to hire 2 additional workers. It was a nerve-wracking move, as their salaries became a fixed expense that I couldn't afford to mismanage. But the payoff was immediate. With more hands on deck, we were able to tackle larger and more lucrative projects, including post-construction cleanups and deep cleaning for high-end clients. Each new challenge tested our limits, but it also pushed us to adapt and improve. I invested in better equipment, a commercial-grade vacuum, industrial-strength cleaning solutions, and specialized tools that made even the toughest tasks manageable. Every dollar felt like a risk, but each investment paid off in dividends. Marketing became another area of focus. My hand-drawn flyers, while effective in the early days, were replaced by professionally printed materials. With the help of a tech-savvy friend, I launched a basic website that highlighted our services, featured testimonials from satisfied clients, and made it easy for potential customers to reach us. The website wasn't fancy, but it was functional, and soon I started receiving inquiries directly through it. This small step into the digital realm felt like a monumental achievement, a sign that my business was becoming legitimate. Not every step forward was smooth. One of the most disheartening challenges came from a local competitor who accused me of undercutting their prices. They began spreading rumors, suggesting that my services were subpar. At first, the accusations rattled me. My reputation, so carefully built, suddenly felt fragile and vulnerable. But instead of retaliating or letting the negativity consume me, I chose a different path. I leaned into transparency, encouraging my clients to leave honest reviews and sharing before and after photos of our work on social media. Slowly but surely, the rumors faded, and my reputation emerged stronger than ever. The experience taught me that integrity was my most valuable asset. The most fulfilling part of this phase wasn't just the growth of the business but the impact it had on my team. My new employees, like me, were immigrants trying to carve out a better life. The steady income we earned together gave them opportunities they hadn't dreamed possible. We became more than co-workers, we were a team bound by shared struggles and triumphs. I took my role as a leader seriously, doing my best to create a supportive environment where we could all thrive. Amidst the progress, I continued to learn valuable lessons about resilience and adaptability. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I received a call from a high-profile client requesting an emergency deep clean. It was well past our usual hours, and my team was exhausted, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity. We gathered our supplies and headed to the site, working late into the night to deliver results that exceeded expectations. The client was so impressed that they referred us to several of their associates, opening doors I hadn't imagined. By the end of this chapter, my business had grown beyond anything I dared to envision when I first started. We weren't just surviving anymore, we were thriving. The challenges were still there, but for the first time, I felt like I was building something that could last. What had started as a desperate attempt to make ends meet had transformed into a foundation for a future filled with possibility. I wasn't just cleaning spaces, I was creating a better life, not just for myself, but for everyone who believed in the journey alongside me. With the growing success of my cleaning business, I felt like I was finally climbing out of the shadows of uncertainty. But life has a way of testing resolve just when you think you found stable ground. The challenges that came next were unlike anything I had faced before, forcing me to dig deeper into my reserves of resilience and creativity. It began with an unexpected health scare. After weeks of non-stop work, I started experiencing sharp pains in my back and shoulders. At first, I ignored them, dismissing the discomfort as a natural consequence of long hours and physical labor. But the pain grew worse, eventually forcing me to see a doctor. The diagnosis was clear: I was overworking my body, and without proper rest and care, I risked serious injury. The news was sobering. For the first time, I had to confront the limits of my endurance. Scaling back wasn't an option, the business needed me. But I realized I couldn't keep carrying the load alone. Delegation became essential. I trained my team more thoroughly, assigning them greater responsibilities while stepping back from the most physically demanding tasks. It was difficult to let go of control, but it was necessary to protect my health and ensure the longevity of the business. As I adjusted to this new dynamic, an economic downturn struck the city. Suddenly, clients who had been reliable sources of income began cutting back on services or cancelling contracts altogether. The steady flow of work that had fueled our growth slowed to a trickle, and I found myself scrambling to make ends meet. My workers relied on the income as much as I did, and the thought of letting anyone go felt unbearable. Desperate to adapt, I explored new ways to keep the business afloat. We diversified our offerings, adding services like organizing spaces and sanitizing offices to meet emerging needs. I also leaned heavily on the relationships I had built with clients, reaching out personally to remind them of the value we provided. Some were receptive, offering smaller but consistent jobs that helped us weather the storm. Amidst these struggles, an unexpected opportunity arose. A property management company, impressed by our work with one of their tenants, offered us a contract to service multiple buildings. It was a lifeline, but it came with its own set of challenges. The scale of the work required more resources than I currently had, forcing me to take a calculated risk. I secured a small loan to invest in additional equipment and hire more staff. The gamble paid off, stabilizing the business during one of its most precarious periods. But the road was far from smooth. One of the new hires proved unreliable, missing shifts and compromising the quality of our work. Clients began complaining, and I had to make the tough decision to let him go. The experience was a stark reminder of the importance of building a team that shared my commitment to excellence. Through these setbacks, I learned the value of resilience, not just the ability to persevere, but the capacity to adapt and grow in the face of adversity. I began keeping a journal, documenting every challenge and how I approached it. This practice helped me see patterns and identify solutions more quickly, turning obstacles into opportunities for growth. One of the most profound lessons came from a longtime client who pulled me aside after a job to share their appreciation. "It's not just the cleaning," they said. "It's the care and professionalism you bring. That's why we stick with you." Those words reminded me why I had started this journey in the first place, not just to survive, but to create something meaningful. By the end of this chapter, my business was not only surviving but beginning to thrive again. The setbacks had taught me to be more strategic, more focused on sustainability. They had also shown me the importance of self-care and trusting others to share the burden. The journey was far from over, but I faced the road ahead with renewed strength and a clearer vision of what I wanted to achieve. Resilience paid off in ways I could never have anticipated. As the months turned into years, the lessons I had learned through hardship began to transform not just my business, but my life. By this point, my cleaning service was a recognizable name in the community, known for reliability and an eco-friendly approach. But the moment that truly marked our breakthrough came from a seemingly ordinary contract. It started with a call from an executive assistant at a mid-sized corporate office. They were hosting a major event and needed the entire building cleaned from top to bottom within 48 hours. The scale of the job was daunting, and it came with tight deadlines and high expectations. But I didn't hesitate to say yes. This was the kind of opportunity one had been working toward. Preparation was key. I mobilized my team, rented additional equipment, and coordinated a meticulous plan to ensure everything would be completed on time. For 2 straight days, we worked around the clock, scrubbing, polishing, and organizing every inch of the building. When we finished, the space gleamed, and the client's satisfaction was evident. "We'll be calling you again," they promised. That promise turned into a long-term contract. The corporate office hired us for regular cleanings, and their endorsement brought new clients my way. Suddenly, I was no longer chasing jobs, they were coming to me. The stability this contract provided allowed me to think beyond immediate survival and focus on growth. I began expanding the business. New hires joined the team, bringing fresh energy and ideas. I invested in training programs to ensure everyone shared the same commitment to quality and professionalism. We upgraded our equipment and implemented software to manage scheduling and client communication more efficiently. These changes not only improved our operations but also strengthened our reputation. The breakthrough also allowed me to give back to the community that had supported me. I started offering discounted cleaning services to local shelters and community centers. It was my way of showing gratitude, but it also deepened my connection to the place that had become my new home. Giving back brought a sense of fulfillment that no amount of financial success could match. But success came with new challenges. With growth came competition, as other cleaning businesses in the area began to notice my rising profile. Some tried to imitate our eco-friendly approach, while others undercut prices to lure clients away. At first, I worried this would threaten what I had built, but I quickly realized that staying true to my values was the best defense. Clients weren't just hiring us for the cleaning, they trusted us because of our integrity and the care we brought to every job. An unexpected event tested this trust. One of my newer employees accidentally damaged a client's property during a job. It was an honest mistake, but the client was understandably upset. Rather than deflect blame, I took full responsibility. We repaired the damage at our expense and offered a complimentary service to make amends. The client's response surprised me. Mistakes happen, but it's rare to see someone handle it this well. You've earned our loyalty. That moment reaffirmed my belief that honesty and accountability were the cornerstones of lasting success. By the end of this chapter, my business was thriving in ways I had only dreamed of when I first arrived in the city. We had a loyal client base, a dedicated team, and a growing reputation as a trusted name in the industry. But more than that, I felt a deep sense of pride in how far I had come. The boy who had arrived with nothing but a suitcase and a dream was now a business owner, a mentor, and a part of the community. The breakthrough wasn't just about financial stability, it was about proving to myself that I was capable of creating something meaningful. And as I looked to the future, I knew the best was yet to come. As my business flourished, I began to reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. The struggles, the sacrifices, and the small victories had shaped not only my business but also my character. It was during these moments of reflection that I realized I had a new purpose, to give back to the community that had embraced me and to help others who were just starting their own journeys. The first step was formalizing the discounted services we offered to shelters and community centers. What had started as an occasional gesture evolved into a structured program. My team and I dedicated one day each month to providing free cleaning services for organizations that supported the homeless, refugees, and low-income families. Seeing the smiles on people's faces and hearing their gratitude was worth more than any paycheck. It reminded me of why I had fought so hard to succeed. But I wanted to do more. I began hosting workshops at local community centers, teaching people how to start and manage small businesses. These workshops focused on practical skills, budgeting, marketing, and building client relationships, all based on the lessons I had learned through trial and error. I made it a point to share not just my successes but also my failures, emphasizing that setbacks were a natural part of the journey. One of the most rewarding aspects of these workshops was seeing others take their first steps toward their dreams. I met people from all walks of life, single mothers trying to provide for their children, young immigrants struggling to find their footing, and even retirees looking to supplement their pensions. Their determination and resilience reminded me of my own early days, and it felt incredible to be able to guide them, even in small ways. Meanwhile, within my business, I began prioritizing the professional growth of my team. I implemented a training program that not only enhanced their cleaning skills but also offered opportunities to learn leadership and management. For those interested, I encouraged them to take on more responsibility, such as overseeing projects or managing client accounts. Seeing my employees grow and succeed brought me a profound sense of fulfillment. Some even began saving money to start their own ventures, and I was more than happy to mentor them along the way. Giving back wasn't just about charity, it was about creating a ripple effect. By empowering others, I was contributing to a culture of mutual support and progress. This ethos extended beyond my business. I became involved in local initiatives aimed at improving the quality of life in the city, from neighborhood cleanup drives to campaigns promoting sustainability. These efforts deepened my connection to the community and solidified my place within it. However, not all reactions were positive. Some competitors saw my outreach efforts as a distraction or even a marketing ploy. A few accused me of using charity to gain an edge in the market. At first, these criticisms stung, but I reminded myself of my intentions. The work I was doing came from a place of genuine gratitude and a desire to make a difference. Over time, the results spoke for themselves. Clients appreciated our commitment to community values, and my team's morale soared as they saw the impact of their work beyond just financial gain. One of the most unexpected outcomes of these efforts was the personal growth I experienced. Giving back taught me to see beyond my own struggles and ambitions. It reminded me of the power of kindness, the importance of resilience, and the value of community. It also reignited the spark that had driven me to leave my home country and chase a better life. I realized that success wasn't just about achieving my own goals, but about helping others achieve theirs. By the end of this chapter, my business was thriving not just financially, but also as a force for good. The cleaning service had become more than a means to an end, it was a platform for creating change. And as I looked ahead, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey wasn't just about where I was going, it was about the lives I could touch along the way. Standing at this juncture of my journey, I feel an immense sense of gratitude and anticipation. The path that brought me here has been anything but smooth, yet every challenge and triumph has built a foundation for what comes next. My business is thriving, my team is growing, and I've found a purpose beyond personal success. But as I look to the future, I know there is still so much more to achieve. My vision for the cleaning service extends far beyond its current scope. I dream of turning it into a franchise, spreading the values of eco-friendly cleaning and community support to other cities. To do this, I'll need to build a robust framework, clear training protocols, standardized practices, and a network of passionate individuals who share my vision. It's an ambitious goal, but one I believe is attainable with the right planning and persistence. I've also started exploring ways to integrate technology into our operations. From scheduling software to automated cleaning tools, the possibilities are endless. My hope is to make our services more efficient without sacrificing the personal touch that has been our hallmark. Technology isn't just about convenience, it's a way to stay competitive and continue delivering exceptional value to our clients. On a more personal level, I've been thinking about the legacy I want to leave behind. Success, to me, is no longer just about financial stability or accolades. It's about the impact I can have on the lives of others. I want to be remembered not just as a business owner but as someone who uplifted those around him. This means continuing to mentor aspiring entrepreneurs, expanding our community programs, and finding new ways to give back. One of the most exciting initiatives on the horizon is a partnership with local schools. I've been in talks with educators about launching a vocational training program for teenagers and young adults. The idea is to teach them practical skills, such as cleaning techniques, customer service, and basic business management, while also instilling values of hard work and responsibility. I see it as an investment in the next generation, a way to give them opportunities one didn't have when I was starting out. Of course, the road ahead will have its challenges. Scaling a business comes with risks, and balancing growth with the values that define us will require careful navigation. But I've learned that challenges are just opportunities in disguise. Every setback I've faced has taught me something valuable, and I'm confident that the lessons I've learned will guide me through whatever lies ahead. As I write this, I'm reminded of the day I arrived in this country with nothing but a suitcase and a fragile dream. The journey since then has been filled with moments of doubt and despair, but also with incredible growth and fulfillment. I've gone from a struggling immigrant to a business owner, mentor, and community leader. And while the road has been long, I wouldn't trade a single step of it. Looking ahead, I'm filled with hope. Hope for my business, for my team, and for the community that has become my home. The journey is far from over, but that's what makes it exciting. There are still stories to write, challenges to overcome, and dreams to chase. And as I move forward, I carry with me the lessons of the past and the promise of what's to come. The future is unwritten, but one thing is certain, I'm ready for whatever it holds.